Am I the asshole for not telling my roommates and sisters I am the owner? I, 33F, bought my home right before the pandemic. The world shut down and I shut into my remote work with the solitude and comfort of a natural introvert. The house was extra large, and I only really could afford it because the family selling was in need of a quick sell. The house has a finished attic and basement, which were easily converted into not-so-mini apartments. The basement has its own entry point and also connects into the main house. There are 4 bedrooms, 2 baths, and the master room has a walk-in closet. During the pandemic, my sister both were hit hard and quickly needed to downsize as their own roommates moved back home. My sisters, 25F and 27F, and I do not have such a luxury, so I offered them rooms at below market rate and told them they needed to supply their own food. The rent was really to help with increase in bills. They were both still in school at the time but also working. This arrangement gave them more breathing room financially. Then, a girl they both knew was evicted from her home with her BF because the family they rented from needed the home back. I offered the basement at near market rate, though still a little under as I felt bad, and it is a basement apartment. After that, a friend of a friend heard about my arrangement and asked if there was any room left. I gave him the attic apartment for another near market rent. Rental agreements were drafted up for each person. I explained the basic rules, the rent, and how long they would have if rent was not received. I told them to read it and return it to me when signed. I left them each with their own copy. I collect the rent the first Saturday of the month. They leave the name blank on the checks for me to fill out, and I always thought it was because they were afraid of misspelling my stupidly unique name and having the check bounce as a result. Apparently not. The issue, I still have one free room in the main part of the house, but I use it as my office and it locks up. My friend knows my sisters and they got to chatting up while out together. They bumped into each other during a day out. My sisters mentioned the extra room, and my friend has a cousin, 18F, who will be starting college in our city and asked if my landlord would rent it out to her. I brushed over the comment because I thought there was miscommunication and told her the room wasn't for rent as I use it for my at-home office. She asked if I was paying for the room and I told her, why would I pay for a room in a house I own? She got a little quiet, apologized for pushing, and told me the struggle it's been to find a spot for her cousin. I told her all of my tenants are solid until December when renewals go out. I can offer her a spot if someone moves, but I stressed it was unlikely as everyone gets along, stays out of each other's business, and it works well for them. We dropped the topic. A few days ago my sisters asked me how the talk went, and I said it was okay, but her cousin won't be moving in. They asked why and I explained to them the situation above. They suggested I move my office to my bedroom or the main room and stop paying rent for an extra room to save costs. When I asked what they meant, they said, well, you do pay rent for the extra space, right? No. I then asked if they knew I was the landlord and they were floored. They never actually read the agreements they have been signing. They went off on me about how I should have told them and that they shouldn't have to be paying rent to family. I told them the rent was to cover their increase in bills. I wasn't going to house them for free when they made enough to cover a fair share on a shared expense. If they would rather full market rent on the rooms they were currently in, I could arrange that come renewal. By now they could afford it with their jobs and having saved money on rent for 5 years. They called me an asshole for holding rent above their heads. This for 5 years. They called me an asshole for holding rent above their heads. This then leaked to the tenants as they talked about the issue to their friends in the basement. While their rent is more than just for bills, it is not the market rent value I could get out of the space, despite them each having income and no family to support. They came to me to ask that I lower the rent, as if being friends with my sisters was reason enough as I was the landlord and not somebody they didn't actually know. The deal they had no longer seems in their favor, apparently. I told them they had until December to decide if they wanted a renewal because it was not going to be lowered. They are now acting like I am kicking them out. When all I said was now that they fully understand their position they needed to make a choice to stay as with current costs and annual adjustments as needed as was our agreement or begin the process of looking as rent prices have skyrocketed and it's much harder to find a place. The adjustments do not include knowing I am the landlord. My attic tenant asked if I was cleaning house and basically begged I don't kick him out. His family turned their back on him because of conflicting views. Personally, his views don't bother me. His family's though. Eesh. I explained it all in detail and he was like, wait, I always knew you were my landlord because it's in the rental agreement. But he also never put my name down because it's hard to spell. Now everyone is upset with me and I feel unwelcomed in my own home. AITA? WIBTA if I didn't renew one or all of their leases because of this hostility I feel. Update 1. Hello everyone. I wanted to thank everybody for taking the time to read my last post and offer up their advice, comments, thoughts, and judgment. I took some of the advice given and have taken the don't rent to family or friends again to heart. So I'm going to jump into the update. I'm going to try to break it down bit by bit before going into it all. Mr. Attic, I'm keeping him. I pulled him aside first and separately. I told him I would not be renewing the others' leases in December and asked if he would want to rent the basement for at market value. He turned it down, asking to keep the attic as he is comfortable there. I told him it would probably be in his best interest to let the others believe this is a whole house clean out so he doesn't get caught in the crossfire. He agreed and went out of his way to turn his social media to private. He also sent me screenshots of a group chat he had been added to. The group chat, my sisters and other pair of tenants started up a group chat to bitch about me being so uncompromising and greedy. They were coming up with ideas to not pay rent or to only pay in part. The basement tenants joked about one of them losing their jobs so they could ask for leniency since I was too stuck up to be kind to them about the rent. The harassment, my sisters and Mr./S basement had told their friends and the families of Mr./S basement about the rent, the lies, and my inability to consider outside perspective and need. I've had a steady stream of calls, DMs, texts, and posts directed at me since before I made my last post, which is what prompted me to post. I made my accounts private, disabled some of the messaging functions, and told the four of them to get this to stop before I got my lawyer involved. Spoiler, they didn't. So after taking a night to think about it, I brought the group together to have a discussion about the rent and situation. My sisters looked smug, and Mr./S Basement kept sharing knowing looks. I told them bluntly I was not going to renew leases in December because their actions, attitudes, and lack of consideration has made me feel unvalued, humiliated by their family, and unwelcome in my own home. I told them if they found an apartment or place to go before December, I wouldn't charge them for breaking the lease, but if there was any damage anywhere, they would not get their security deposits back until the pricing out was settled. If there was more damage than their security deposit, they would be taken to court. I told them I was done being kind and understanding to people who thought so lowly of me. I also warned them I could and would break the leases myself if I felt the need, in which case they would have 30 days. It was immediate chaos. A lot of yelling, insults, and cursing. Even Mr. Attic, but he was yelling at the others for getting him kicked out when he didn't do anything. He made an epic show of storming up to the attic and slamming the door. He sent me laughing emojis and texted that he wasn't going to be able to keep a straight face a little later. I waited for them to stop yelling, and when they demanded what they would do, I set a stack of ads for apartments and houses for rent in the nearby area and said they would have to start looking now. I told my sisters I would help pay for their moving truck, but told the basement tenants they would have to ask their families for help moving out. Mr. Basement picked up the stack of papers and his eyes went wide. He stared at me and asked if I was fucking serious. I told him the prices listed were not mine to judge, change, or deal with. I reminded him his current place was below market because I had a say in it. Market prices for one-bedrooms in the area are well over $1,500 a month if he wants near his work and close enough to walk to stores and things. He currently has a 2-bedroom for less than that. My sisters grabbed some of the papers and the 27-year-old started crying because she couldn't afford an apartment on her own. She told me about her student loans and credit card debt. I told her, too bad. I gave you a good deal out of kindness and you sent an army after me. I would have considered letting you stay if you hadn't been so nasty. I told all of them they could probably swing a 2-bedroom between the 4 of them and got up and left. They refused to talk to me now. My sisters spent the night in the basement apartment and I could hear shrieks and crying if I walked by the door that leads down there. I feel a little bad, but I reread your comments to keep my sanity. As for if I want them out, I can give them 30 days notice since they are inside my own home. I checked and double-checked with the lawyer and this information had been in their rental contracts. If I do have to kick them, and they try to refuse to leave and drag it out in court, which they don't have the money for, I have been given some handy advice by a fellow landlord who had to remove his own brother. I can't remove them by force, but I can make living there entirely uncomfortable. Nothing stops me from taking doors off hinges or starting remodeling while their stuff is in the way. Nothing stops me from turning off the water or electric for their sections of the house during remodeling. Quick edit, just for remodeling purposes. It wouldn't be done to make them leave. But they can't stop my remodeling as squatters. It might seem like an asshole thing to do, but they would be the ones to start it, and I actually do want to repaint and do some adjustments. The reason I am leaning on evicting them by August is because the harassment has gotten so much worse now that there is an actual non-renewal happening. I'm leaving my phone on silent and collecting messages, voicemails, emails, and other things to hand off to my lawyer next week. I told them to call off their dogs and they haven't. I asked Mr. Attic if he knew anyone who would need a place and to let me know. He has a few friends from his community who seem interested, as they either live with roommates or family and want out.